Hi, welcome to my public journal. Today I set out to do a bit of cleaning in my code base, and I ended up working more on the documentation for the CLI tool. So there are a lot of functionalities that are built in there, but how would the end user get to know what is available, how to use it and all. So I had to write the documentation for it, and I'll quickly show you something that I worked on. But in the course of working on the documentation, I thought it occurred to me that the way that I've implemented the get, as in the command that someone can use or the end user can use to get any snippet, may not be right in the way that I ultimately want to have it. Let me give you some context. So this is a platform where people are going to be able to create code snippets. So if you have any sort of code, you've written an algorithm that you want to save, or any code that performs any specific function, you want to store just that part of the code so that you are able to reuse it anytime that you want. The platform is supposed to allow that, but then we're going to also make the code that you save there, depending on the visibility status of the code, we are going to make it either private or public. So if the code is public, what it means is that anybody at all can or should be able to have access to it. So in the first place, we are making people get access to all the code on the platform. But that will also be a lot, assuming that we have thousands of users and they have created thousands of snippets. It means if I do a get command, if I use a get command on the CLI to get all snippet, I'm going to get thousands of them. What if I'm only interested in the ones that I have created? So I needed to create that scope so that the end user can select only code snippets that you have created. But then again, it should also allow the end user to be able to choose any code snippets at all. So for instance, if they have the ID of a specific code snippet that does not belong to them, they should be able to have access to it for as long as that code snippet is public. And if it is private, it is only the person who created it who is going to have access to it. So I had to do a bit of refactoring and also work on the middleware for authentication. And it was a bit tricky because after some time I was able to implement it, but when I implemented the scoping, what it meant was that every request that was going to that particular endpoint would need to be authenticated. That means that the user needs to log in to have access to it. And that is not totally representative of what I want, because I do not want everybody to log in. Even if you are not logged in, you should still be able to have access to public snippets. And eventually I was able to figure it out and work my way around it such that I had to create another middleware to check those ones. So I call it the soft authentication. That means that if the person is not logged in, do not block them from accessing it for as long as the visibility of that code snippet is public. And I'm excited that that has worked. Hopefully tomorrow I'll do some bit of final touches on the CLI tool, and hopefully I should be able to publish the npm package. That's what I'm looking forward to, either tomorrow or the day after. But for now, let me show you on the computer what I did today. Here is the readme file. That's the documentation that I created for the CLI tool with a couple of the functionalities that are in here, and there are a few others that I may have to add to it. So I've tried to implement as many of them as possible and documented how to use it. So hopefully it should be ready for publishing to npm. Then I also talked about the authentication bit. So let me quickly show you. Now I'm able to get this. So to get I have a token here. This is the authentication token that I'm using. This means that at this very moment I am logged in, so I can make a request and it brings me that. But if I take this token away, or assuming that token expires, currently I'm not authenticated. What it means is that if a user is accessing the snippet whilst not logged in, let's see what happens. They are still able to access it just because this particular snippet they are having has visibility to be public. So if the visibility is private, then only the people who have access to it, or the person who created it, should be able to have access to it. And on the code base side, I created a middleware called the soft authenticate, and what it is doing is going to check if a user exists. That is, from passport, when we authenticate this, do we get a user object? If we get a user object, then we add that user object to the request model, and we say request.user is equal to this user. Then if it doesn't exist, we still do not do anything. So all I'm checking is whether it exists and attaching it to the request object. Once it is there, attach it to the request object, and let's move on to the next. So whether it's there or not, that should not be a problem. And I had to also modify the controller function for getting the snippet. And the tricky part was this part where I was writing the logic for finding what we are looking for. So in the first place, we are finding a snippet where we are either searching by the MongoDB or Mongo's ID, or MongoDB ID actually, or we are using the hash ID provided, or we are using the slug. So depending on what the user provided, if they provided any of these, it still should work for them. But before we proceed, we also want to check what is the visibility status of this. So we check the visibility status and it's public. If it is public, yes, they can have access to it. Otherwise, we are checking for the request.user object. If that is available, then we're going to set author is equal to the ID of this specific user. Otherwise, we are not adding any other query to it, so we just return it if the visibility is public. That means that if the visibility is private, then nothing will be returned. So that's the updates that I did today. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this series. If you do like this video and you want to keep motivating me to keep on going, then please smash the like button and also subscribe to the channel if you're yet to subscribe to it. If you have any questions for me, any suggestions, anything at all that you want me to hear about, please drop it in the comments section below, and I'm happy to take it up. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.